Hello, good morning. Let's get started. Today we are going to be doing lecture 11, which is the reproductive system. It's quite short, so we probably will be done in maybe like 45 minutes or so. And then after that, we will take up lab number 3. This is already week 12, which means we only have one more week of lecture. Next week is week 13, and we'll do the final lecture. And you will have the final test on the week 14. So yeah, let's get to it. Right, so first question here, right? Describe the key event that takes place in the diagram below related to the hormonal regulation of the menstrual cycle. All right, so I'm just going to refresh your memory on some of the key structures here, and then we're going to come back to this diagram afterwards. So first of all, let's talk about the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. So hypothalamus is the master gland of the body, right? The master gland. It is responsible for controlling many processes related to equilibrium, homeostasis, through the use of hormone. Closely related to the function of hypothalamus and also plays a role in the homeostasis process is the pituitary gland. Okay, so let's take a look at the relationship between these two things before we talk about the menstrual cycle. So here is my here is the hypothalamus right here. Okay, and then dangling from the hypothalamus is going to be the pituitary gland. All right, so hypothalamus up here. And then the pituitary gland is actually separated into two parts. Okay, there is the anterior pituitary. And then there is the posterior pituitary. Now, don't get the wrong idea here. The left side is not always the anterior pituitary gland, right? It depends which way your head is looking, right? So like if this is your head, okay, this is the nose. Okay, the hypothalamus is all the way in here with the pituitary gland like right there, right? So the left one is the anterior because that's the front of the head, right? If you're looking on the other side, right, then the anterior pituitary gland would be on the right side. Okay, so it depends which way you're looking at. Don't always think that the left side is anterior. On a diagram, typically the bigger one is the anterior. All right. So the function of the posterior pituitary gland is that it will store hormones produced by the hypothalamus. Okay. Now, I think I already talked about this in the lecture, and if I have not yet, I will talk about this in the next recording. But you know, just to give you a heads up or review, whichever it is, we have some neurons where the cell body is in the hypothalamus, and then their axon actually goes all the way down to the posterior pituitary gland. Okay, and you have the axon terminal right here. All right, so there are some hormones where you will produce them in the cell body of the neurons. They will be packaged into vesicles, which will then travel down the axon and be stored in the axon terminal. Okay, much like how you would store neurotransmitters. Okay, but this is going to be stored in the posterior pituitary gland. Okay, so example of such hormones would be things like ADH, which we've already learned, right? The antidiuretic hormone, which is responsible for conserving water when you're dehydrated. And then there is another one, which is oxytocin. Does anybody know what oxytocin does? Oxytocin is a hormone that is going to cause the uterus to contract during labor. Okay? It's also going to cause the letdown of the milk when the mother is nursing the baby. Okay, so these are hormones that will be produced in the hypothalamus and stored in the posterior pituitary gland. Okay, you'll learn more about them next week. Now, what we are focusing today on would be the anterior pituitary gland. So you would have another set of neurons where they will not go all the way to the anterior pituitary gland. They would just kind of stop like right here. All right. And the anterior pituitary gland is going to make its own hormone. Okay, produces its own hormone. Okay. The release of anterior pituitary hormone are controlled by hypothalamus through releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones. So these are kind of like red light, green lights kind of stuff that will regulate whether or not the anterior pituitary gland can secrete certain hormones. Okay, so releasing hormones are the green lights, which allows the anterior pituitary gland to release the hormone, whereas inhibiting hormone is the red light. It will stop the anterior pituitary gland from releasing its hormone. So the AP has many hormones. Okay, so I'm just going to list some examples. We have follicle stimulating hormone. We have luteinizing hormones. These are related to what we are talking about today. It's related to the reproductive system. But there are other ones, okay, that you don't have to know yet, but I'm just going to write it down for you to kind of give you some foreshadowing. There's something called TSH, which stimulates the thyroid. There's something called ACTH, which stimulates the adrenal gland. And then we have other things like growth hormone and something called prolactin, okay, PRL. I think that's the short form for it, okay? Now, the point here that I'm trying to make is each of these hormones will be regulated by a specific releasing hormone and a specific inhibiting hormone. And these hormones, the releasing and the inhibiting hormone, comes from these neurons in the hypothalamus, okay? Not the ones that goes all the way to the posterior pituitary gland, but the ones that stop just right here, right? So for example, if we're talking about FSH and LH, okay, the release of FSH and LH is controlled by a releasing hormone called GnRH, okay, gonadotropin releasing hormone. Okay, so once the hypothalamus releases the gonadotropin releasing hormone or GnRH, then the anterior pituitary gland will release the FSH and the LH. Okay, we will be learning 3 different types of releasing hormones in the course. Okay, there are inhibiting hormone as well, but then we just kind of have to know that they're there. We're not going to learn the names for them. So that's the relationship between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So let's take a look at the ovaries. All right. So here is the ovary, right? We have the fallopian tube, right? There's going to be the other ovary on the other side. Technically, it's supposed to be like this. There's the ovary, and then there's going to be the uterus, right? Okay, so let's just go through some basic terms. Okay, So here we have the, again, ovary. And so 2 ovaries, 1 on each side. And then we have the oviduct or fallopian tube. Okay, so this is the location of fertilization. All right. This is the uterus. That's where the baby grows. And the walls of the uterus. Okay, the walls of the uterus, that is the endometrium. Endometrium. Okay. This is just a very brief description of the major things that you have to know. Of course, you should take a look at the full diagram. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom in onto the ovary here. I'm going to zoom in onto the ovary. There's the ovary. I think I did this in the lecture recordings already, but let's go through it again. So in the ovaries, we have these follicles. Follicle. The follicle is what will develop into an egg. Will develop into egg. Okay. So, what happens is in the menstrual cycle, we have the first half and the second half, right? Okay. So, you know, we can say typically in a typical 28 days cycle. Okay. Of course, it varies from person to person, right? It might be longer, it might be shorter, but you know, just consider a typical 28-day cycle. The first half, 1 to 14 days, that would be called the follicular phase. Follicular phase. And then 14 to 28 days, that would be the luteal phase. And right between these two phases would be the ovulation. Okay, so ovulation in between. Okay. So what happens is, in the ovary, we're within the ovary right now. Okay, during the follicular phase, which is this half here. Okay, follicular phase. As the name implies, the follicle is going to develop during the follicular phase. So this follicle will grow, grow, grow until, you know, the egg is like mature inside. Okay. As the follicle is developing, it is going to release a hormone. Does anybody remember what the hormone is? Talk about this in class. Can someone tell me what the hormone is? Yes, the arrow is correct. That is the estrogen. Okay, so estrogen is released from the ovary as the follicle develops. Okay. So that's going to take like the first half of the cycle, like 14 days or something, if we are talking about 28 days. And then the egg will be released during ovulation. Okay, so egg goes into the fallopian tube. And then there is going to be some leftover stuff. Okay, this leftover stuff is going to grow into what's called the corpus luteum. Okay, the yellow, a package of tissue that's yellowish. That's what it means. And this second half is going to be the luteal phase. Okay. So the purpose of the corpus luteum is to pump out another hormone. Okay. What hormone is that this time? That is the progesterone. That's correct. Okay. So progesterone is released by the corpus luteum. Okay, but this is not going to last forever. Okay, if there's no pregnancy, if the egg does not get fertilized in the fallopian tube, then the corpus luteum is going to break down eventually. Okay, and then the whole cycle starts again. So any question about what's going on in the ovary, okay, during the first phase and then the second phase and then the sandwich in between is the ovulation. Okay, so copy what you need to, and then I'm gonna talk about the relationship between what's going on here with the brain's hormones. All right. Now, it's going to be too crowded for me to fit everything here. I mean, you could try. I'm just going to copy the picture and then, do it on a separate piece of paper, page. So let's copy this here. And we'll go back to right here. Okay. So here is the hypothalamus. Here is the anterior pituitary gland, and they are connected through two network of capillaries. Okay, so the hypothalamus will secrete the GnRH, which would then travel through the capillary network here and go to the anterior pituitary gland like right away. Okay, so here is what's going to be happening at step one. Step one. Okay. The hypothalamus secretes GnRH, okay, which stimulates the anterior pituitary gland to release follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Okay, but in the first part here, it is the follicle stimulating hormone that will be doing most of the work. Okay, you will have some LH. It's not really going to be playing as significant as a role as FSH. Okay, so that's number one right here. Okay. Number two is right here. The follicle stimulating hormone travels to the ovaries via the bloodstream. And, there are some control mechanism where, if the right ovary is already developing an egg, then the left one is not going to be stimulated. There's some, crosstalk between the two ovaries. We're not going to worry about that. Okay. But the FSH will travel to the ovaries via the bloodstream and stimulate a follicle to develop. Right. After all, what does FSH stand for? Let's write it out. Follicle stimulating hormone. So it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. This hormone will stimulate the follicle. Okay, so you can see the follicle here is growing, is growing, is growing. All right. And number 3. I mean, what's going on? Well, as the follicle is growing, we were talking about this earlier, right? Let's see, as the follicle is growing, we will be secreting estrogen, okay, which is what this is saying. So as the follicle develops, estrogen is released from the ovaries. Okay. And then what does the estrogen do? Okay. Estrogen will stimulate the hypothalamus to release more GnRH. Okay, so this is called positive feedback, okay, because you're exaggerating the release of some hormone. Okay, that's why there's a plus here. Okay, so this is called positive feedback. Now, not shown in this diagram, but equally important is this. Okay. In addition, estrogen will cause the endometrium to thicken. Okay, by stimulating new blood vessels to develop. Okay. We can probably write that by stimulating new blood vessels to form. Okay. And the purpose of this is to prepare the body for implantation in case, you know, there is a pregnancy. All right. Okay, so just to recap very quickly. GnRH is released from the hypothalamus, which stimulate the anterior pituitary gland to release FSH and a bit of LH. And then FSH will cause the follicle to develop. And as it's developing, we release estrogen. Estrogen does 2 things. Number 1, it goes back to the hypothalamus and cause you to release even more GnRH. And the second thing that it does is it will go to the endometrium, which is the lining of the uterus, and cause it to thicken. Okay, so then what happens next? Number 4, right? Number 4. Okay, so this is the second round now. Second round. Okay, so number 4. The increase in GnRH, okay, created by the positive feedback loop from the positive feedback will trigger the release of more FSH and LH from the anterior pituitary. Okay, and this time around, it is the LH that's going to be playing a key role. Okay. So number 5, the LH surge, that means a sudden increase in LH, triggers ovulation to take place. Okay, so you should know if people are trying to figure out when they're ovulating, they would be testing for LH. Okay, so ovulation kit detects the level of LH in urine. Okay. I don't know if anybody used an ovulation kit before, but basically how it works is you will pee on the stick, and it uses antibodies to detect the levels of LH. So every day you would do this, and the test kit will compare today's level with previous day. Okay? And if all of a sudden there is a drastic increase compared to previous day, then it's telling you that there is an LH surge in the body, which means ovulation is either going to be today or tomorrow. Okay, so this is useful information for people who try to get pregnant or avoid trying to get pregnant. That would be useful information. All right, that's it for this diagram. Any questions at all? You sure? No questions? All right, let's take a look at the second half of our cycle. So here it is, number 6. What's going on in number 6? All right, so the egg is in the fallopian tube right now. And as we mentioned earlier, the leftover material from the follicle is going to develop into the corpus luteum. Okay, so after ovulation, the corpus luteum forms. This tissue will release progesterone. Okay. Progesterone does two things. Progesterone will inhibit the release of GnRH through negative feedback this time. Okay, we already have an egg in the fallopian tube. We don't need another one for the time being. That's why we have to shut down the release of GnRH. Okay. Also, the egg is in the fallopian tube now, so there is a chance for pregnancy to take place, which is why the second thing that the progesterone will do is it will further develop, will cause the endometrium to thicken further. Okay, so we'll further develop the endometrium because implantation could happen anytime now. Okay. So number 7, what happens is with a suppression of GnRH, FSH, and LH levels decline. So what happens next? Well, if pregnancy does not occur, then the corpus luteum will break down. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you about it. You can listen to me. If the pregnancy does not occur, then the corpus luteum will break down. Now, what happens if the corpus luteum breaks down? Without the corpus luteum, then progesterone level will decline, right? And as soon as the progesterone level drops, then no more hormones will be supporting the endometrium. So all those new blood vessels that were formed during this cycle will now be shed. Okay, so that caused the menses to place, right? Okay, and that marks the beginning of the next cycle. Also, without the corpus luteum, the progesterone level will drop, and with a lowering in progesterone level, the GnRH is no longer suppressed. Okay, you see the progesterone was inhibiting the release of GnRH through the negative feedback, right? So if you take away the progesterone, the GnRH will now bounce back. And once the GnRH increases, then it will take you all the way back to step number 1, right? The GnRH, which will then stimulate the anterior pituitary gland to release FSH and LH, and then a new follicle will develop in the new cycle, and then the whole thing just repeats itself. Okay. Yes, please, Patrick, go ahead.
So would you say that progesterone can be used as a form of birth control?
Yes, exactly. So, if people take an analog, which is like a drug that has a structural similarity to progesterone, then they will not be ovulating because it will keep on suppressing the GnRH. That's very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, what happens if pregnancy occurs, right? Okay. So if pregnancy occurs, then we cannot let the endometrium shed. Okay, because then the egg, the fertilized egg is going to implant in the endometrium, right? So what happens is after implantation, one of the first thing that develops is the placenta, right? Okay, so during that time, as the placenta is being developed, there's going to be another hormone that is produced. Okay, it's called the HCG. Okay, human chorionic gonadotropin. Okay, we just call HCG here. Okay, so this one will sustain the corpus luteum until the placenta is fully formed. Okay. Once the placenta is formed, it will take over the role of producing progesterone, okay, and estrogen as well. Okay, both hormones are gonna skyrocket during pregnancy, right? And then the corpus luteum is no longer needed. But it's critical to have the HCG during this, transient period where the placenta is still forming. All right. So without pregnancy, corpus luteum breaks down, progesterone goes down. With fertilization, you're going to have a new hormone called HCG from the developing placenta, which will tell the corpus luteum to hang on a little bit before the full placenta is formed. All right. So in pregnancy kid, if you want to know if you're pregnant or not, the thing that you're detecting would be HCG. If you want to see if you're ovulating or not, the hormone that you'll be testing would be LH. Okay. So that is what's going on. Let's do some polls. All right. Some easy stuff first. Go ahead. Yep, the correct answer is the fallopian tube. Okay, not the cervix. The cervix is is the structure that close the entrance to the uterus. Okay, when the baby is growing in the uterus, there's a plug that seals the cervix, so nothing goes in, nothing comes out. Okay, number 2, the endometrium thickens in the presence of, and you have to select all of it. Okay, anyone else? All right. It is the estrogen and the progesterone, right? So let's take a look at the notes that we took. Over here, we can see, right? Estrogen will cause the endometrium to thicken. And then over here, progesterone will cause the endometrium to thicken, right? So those are the answers. Not the LH, not the FSH. The LH triggers ovulation. FSH causes the follicle to develop, right? All right, let's try another one. Go ahead. Okay, so if you increase the level of progesterone, okay, what's going to happen is you will decrease GnRH, right? From the negative feedback. Let's take a look at our diagram again. Increasing progesterone will cause the GnRH to go down. And once you decrease the GnRH, both LH and FSH will drop as well. So the correct answer would be decrease FSH, decrease LH. All right. And this one we talked about. Go ahead. Just seeing if you're paying attention. Go ahead. Yep. If you were listening, you would know the answer is LH. okay, for ovulation kit. And for pregnancy kit, right? Pregnancy kit. What's the answer for this one? You guys can just tell me. What does pregnancy kit detects? Who can tell me? That's right, Sierra, HCG. Patrick's also correct. Okay, human chorionic gonadotropin. All right, the rest of the stuff is for guys, so we'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, we did this diagram already in extensive detail in the lecture. I'm not going to repeat that. We also filled in all of these during the lecture recordings, so I'm not going to do that either. We can fill in the blanks here for all these things. Okay. All right, here. Okay. So the uterine lining is called the endometrium. Again, it will thicken in the presence of estrogen and progesterone. The something is a tube that connects. Sorry, I got to fix all these typos. Connects the ovaries to the uterus. That is the fallopian tube. Okay, also called oviduct. Huh? Oviduct. The smooth muscle of the uterus is called the myometrium. Okay, the contraction of which will help push the baby out. The cervix is the lowest portion of the uterus. Okay, there is a mucus plug that will seal the cervix during pregnancy. Okay, so again, nothing comes out and nothing goes in. When I say nothing goes in, I mean like, you know, if there is some kind of like infection from the mother, for example, right? Like fungal infection or something like that, that's not going to go in and affect the baby. Okay. If the mother had intercourse during pregnancy, the sperm's not going to be able to go in to the uterus, okay, because of that mucus plug. So the mucus plug is actually going to come out you know, before pregnancy, and then when that comes out, then the water breaks, right? Then you know you're gonna go into labor soon. Next one, something is a hormone secreted from the hypothalamus, regulates the release of FSH and LH. That is the GnRH. It's okay to use the short form, but it's a good idea to remember what they're, have an idea at least what they stand for, because the name usually tells you what it does. And the FSH and the LH will be released from the anterior pituitary gland. The corpus luteum is a transient structure. It's not going to last for very long. Okay. If no pregnancy occurs, it's just going to last for, you know, 14 days or so. And it secretes the hormone progesterone. A surge means sudden increase. A surge of luteinizing hormone triggers ovulation. The HCG is a hormone produced by developing placenta and often is used to detect pregnancy. This actually will continue to rise throughout pregnancy. Okay. The process of sperm production is called spermatogenesis. And there are three major glands in the and that contributes to the formation of semen. There's the prostate. There is the bulbal urethra. Bulbal urethral gland, also known as the Cowper's gland. And then there's the seminal vesicle. Seminal vesicle. Okay. Now I'm going to quickly go through what's going on with the guys in terms of the hormones. All right. So we start with the hypothalamus again. And so this is male reproductive system. Okay, so the hypothalamus will secrete the GnRH. Right? The guys also have GnRH, right? And that will cause the anterior pituitary gland to release FSH and LH. Okay, so we're going to have the FSH and LH. So again, right, like follicle stimulating hormone. In female, the follicle develops into an egg. Males, guys do not have follicles, right? But the equivalent of the follicle would be like a germ cell that develop into a sperm. Okay, so FSH in female triggers oogenesis, right, formation of an egg, whereas FSH is going to trigger spermatogenesis. Okay, so the cell that will help support spermatogenesis is something called the Sertoli cells. Okay, so Sertoli cells support and facilitate spermatogenesis. All right. LH, on the other hand, it will stimulate the testosterone producing cells to, well, produce testosterone, right? So it will produce testosterone, which will go and further encourage these Sertoli cells. Okay, so this is like positive feedback. Okay, positive feedback means it exaggerates a particular outcome, exaggerates a particular effect, right? In this case, exaggerates spermatogenesis. But, you know, we don't want too much. We don't want to waste resources making things that we don't need. So another thing that the testosterone will do is it will actually go back to the hypothalamus and inhibits its production of GnRH, right? It will also go and inhibit the anterior pituitary gland as well. So these are negative feedbacks. Okay, so in this way, it auto-regulates itself. And there's another hormone from the Sertoli cells that will also inhibit it. I don't remember if I talked about it. I'll write down here. Okay, there is something called the inhibin, INHIBIN. Okay, which will also suppress the anterior pituitary gland. So it's all about maintaining a balance, right? Okay, you don't want to waste too much resources making things that we don't need, so you need to shut it down. It's like a thermostat, right? Okay, if it's warm enough, you don't want the heat to keep on cranking up, right? So you need to turn it off when you reach the desired temperature. Similar here, you want to turn off spermatogenesis if you already, you know, have a certain level of sperm produced, for example. All right, so that's what happens in the male. Certainly much simpler than the female situation. Okay. Any questions about any of the stuff that I've talked about? All right. So there are two application questions here. Let's take a look at what's going on. It's really long. I'll read it to you. Theon is upset about his low sperm count and decides to buy testosterone supplements online. He took twice the recommended dose. The supplements increased his libido and made him feel more masculine. After taking the supplements for a few months, he went to his doctor to do another sperm count. How do you think the sperm count results will be? Justify your answer. What do you think? Do you think he will have normal sperm count, high sperm count, low sperm count? What's going on after he take the testosterone, a lot of it? Okay, Sierra's thing, he's gonna have low sperm count. Why is that? Jiang also think it's low. Why? Why? Because he took too much. Yeah, that's pretty much it, okay? He took too much. Now, if this was like a, actual test question, you would have to explain more, but it's okay. I get what you mean. Okay, let's take a look at this diagram, right? Remember, testosterone, yes, it does facilitate spermatogenesis, but if you take too much, then testosterone will actually negatively inhibit GnRH and the release of FSH and LH, right? Okay, so having a super high level of testosterone will actually be counterproductive in terms of sperm production. Okay, it will drastically suppress these hormones, which ultimately would suppress spermatogenesis as well. Okay, so he's gonna have low sperm count. Testosterone should not be taken unless it is recommended by your doctor, right? So people who are aging, for example, low testosterone level can link to other things like muscle mass decreasing, reduction in cardiovascular functions and stuff like that. So they could take some testosterone to compensate for it. Much like females, they have to. Well, they don't have to, but they could take like estrogen supplements, right? After menopause, it's similar for men, but it's testosterone that we take. All right, next one. There is a very complicated drug name. I always forget how to pronounce this. I'm not even going to try, okay, to embarrass myself. But there is a drug, okay, and it's synthetic progesterone. This is for real. If you look it up online, you will find this, okay? So this is sold under the brand name Plan B. Okay, so what is it used for? It is commonly known as the morning after pill, which prevents pregnancy after unprotected sex. Statistically, an estimated 0.6 to 2.6% of women who take the morning after pill after unprotected sex will still get pregnant. On the product's website, so if you look this up on the website, I found that, like I actually looked it up. I created this question, right? So I looked up this thing, and then on the site, it says, as a disclaimer, it is not an abortion pill. Okay, meaning if you are already pregnant and then you take this thing, it will not cause you to become unpregnant. All right. So based on your knowledge of female reproductive system, explain how the drug cannot prevent pregnancy 100% and why taking the drug will not cause an abortion if you are already pregnant when you take the pill. Does anybody want to take a crack at this? Any brave soul who wants to tell me what you think the answer is? Yes, Patrick, go for it. Oh, I saw you. Yep.
Well, I was gonna say it's because the process repeats, so maybe the LH and FSH won't fully be suppressed, but at the same time, like it just only reduces the chances, but it's not gonna fully be suppressed because the process repeats.
When you say the process repeats, what process are you referring to? Just want to double check I understand you
The
correctly.
ovarian cycle.
Oh, okay. So like the whole thing repeats itself. So like basically you're saying, you don't, when you're taking the pill, you don't know which point of the cycle you are at. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yes, that's precisely it, right? So look, right, this is synthetic progesterone, and progesterone, the point of progesterone is, if you recall, to lower GnRH, which in turns lower FSH and lowers LH, right? Okay. So look, if the person already had an LH search, okay, if LH search already occurred, okay, and then the person had like unprotected sex, then taking this will not help, because following the LH search, ovulation would have taken place, right? Okay, so if ovulation has already occurred, then taking this will not prevent pregnancy. Okay, there's still a high chance the egg is going to meet the sperm, and then it's going to get pregnant, right? This will only work if you have not ovulated yet. Okay, so taking this will prevent ovulation, but once it's ovulated, then there's still a high chance of getting pregnant. Right? Now, why is it not going to cause abortion? Right? Again, the whole mechanism here is that it will suppress the LH and the FSH. Okay, so if you already, the egg is already fertilized, taking this will actually not change anything, because if you think about it, the body will naturally do this anyways. If you're pregnant, right? When you're pregnant, the progesterone level will remain high because of the corpus luteum, right? So taking this would just further elevate the progesterone. It will not interfere with the pregnancy at all. Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I assume the rest of you are also okay. All right. Just one more week of this, okay? And you guys will move on, all right? Hang in there. Now, you guys have been troopers coming here every week. Good job. Number three, there is another drug that I also cannot pronounce, okay? But this drug, I can pronounce the citrate. So this one, the clomiphene or something, citrate, is used to induce ovulation in some forms of infertility. Its function is similar to GnRH. So explain how it can induce ovulation. Well, this is straightforward, right? Because if you increase GnRH level, the next thing that will happen is you will increase FSH, and increase LH, both of which will play a role in the development of an egg and ovulation, and that could increase the chance of getting pregnant. And as a I don't know if you would want to call it a side effect, but as a side effect, for lack of a better word, of using this, it will also increase the chance of having twins by roughly 10%. Explain why this is the case. Okay, so because you are increasing LH and FSH, there's a chance that you will ovulate more than one egg at a time. Okay, if there are more than one eggs in your system and both get fertilized in that cycle, then you will have twins. Right? These are, of course, non-identical twins, but nevertheless, you will have a high chance of having a twin. I just read yesterday, someone had an identical triplet. It was on my news feed, and the odds of that happening is 1 in 2 million. Can you imagine having identical triplets? That is just crazy. Anyways, number 4, in an experiment, rat ovaries were removed immediately after impregnation, after pregnancy, basically. And then the rats were divided into 2 groups. Treatments and results are summarized in the table below. Propose an explanation for the results and write a conclusion for the experiment. All right, so let's see what's going on. Okay, group 1 here. First of all, both of them, the ovaries are removed. Okay, so group 1 received daily injections of progesterone of 0.25. Okay, and none of them were able to carry the fetus to birth. Okay? And group 2, you give them 2 milligrams of progesterone, and 100% of them were able to carry the fetuses to birth. So this, of course, is not surprising, right? We need the ovaries after pregnancy to keep the pregnancy, right? Until at least the placenta is formed, okay? Because in the ovaries, we have the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum will pump out the progesterone to keep the thickness of the endometrium. So if you surgically remove the ovaries immediately after pregnancy for the rats, then the progesterone is gone. The source of the progesterone is gone. So if you're not supplying a steady source of progesterone, nothing is supporting the endometrium, then it will shed along with the implanted eggs, implanted zygote, I should say, and of course the pregnancy is not going to be successful. Okay. So that's basically, this experiment shows that you need the ovaries after pregnancy in order to keep the fetus viable. Okay, but only until the placenta has formed. Okay? Once the placenta has formed, then it will take over the role of producing progesterone and estrogen, and it's going to be okay. And that is it. That is it. All right. Any comments, questions about this whole lesson? All right. Now, I just want to remind you that there is a course evaluation. You may have received emails about it. So please take a moment and do that for me. It will, be useful information for me to see what can be changed, in the future, so that I can run the course a little bit better. The survey, of course, is anonymous, so you can be honest with your feedback. Okay, if you think something is not working, please do let me know. I would appreciate the feedback. And I don't get to see it until after the final test. Okay, so like it's not like I read it and I say, you guys are telling me all these bad stuff, I'm gonna make the final test difficult. That's not gonna happen. Okay, so please be honest with your feedback. I would appreciate that. All right, why don't we take a quick break, 5 minutes, and when we come back, we will do the lab 3. We'll take up the lab number 3. All right, so see you in a bit. All right, let's take up the lab number 3. Hey, here is the kidney. So we will have to label A to J. Okay, so let's do that. A over here. A is the adrenal cortex. Okay. And the inside here, that's the adrenal medulla. So just to, we'll learn more about this next week, but just to write down now, the adrenal cortex will secrete things like aldosterone. Okay. And something called like cortisol. Okay, so these are related to long-term chronic stress hormone. Whereas the adrenal medulla, that is gonna secrete things like, epinephrine. Okay, which is more like fight or flight, like immediate stress. All right. There's also another one called norepinephrine. Okay. Epinephrine is the same as adrenaline, in case you did not know that. Okay. I over here, that is the renal cortex. C is this whole thing. That is the renal pyramid. F is the renal artery. That is the renal vein. J here is a little bit hard to see, but that would be the renal pelvis. Okay. That's D right there. That is the renal capsule. Did I miss anything? Oh, right here. That is the renal column. Okay. Moving on. Frontal section. What hormone secretion? Oh, we did that already. I kind of jumped the gun on that one. That is the aldosterone. Let's write that down again. Regulates blood osmolarity, right? So the aldosterone is part of the ROS system, right, which helps bring the blood pressure level up, right? What blood vessel does F branch off from? F is right here, so that branches off from the abdominal aorta. Okay. What structure does E connect to? E is right here, so that connects to the ureters. Okay. Ureters. Next one. Locate each of the following on the model. Renal pyramid. That should be easy. So there is a renal pyramid. Okay. A. All these are renal pyramids. Renal papilla. The renal papilla is the tip of the pyramid. So there is the renal papilla. Okay. There is another renal papilla, so on and so forth. Segmental artery. That's this one right here. So this is the renal artery coming in. As soon as you enter, it becomes the segmental artery. Interlobar vein. That's the one that goes up along the side of the pyramid. Okay, so there is another one right here. Okay, all these things that goes up on the side. Arcuate artery or vein. That's the one that's on the outer edge. That is E right here. Okay, outer edge. And the cortical radii artery. That's all these things that are on the outside. All these ones that are branching off from the cortical, from the arcuate. All these ones. All right. Label A, B, and C. A is the glomerulus. Oh, before I forget, I should mention that this lab quiz is 5%, right, as opposed to 2.5 compared to the previous ones, because it will contain all these microscope slides, not just for the last unit, but all the units of the entire course, right? So just go back to the other old labs and make sure you study the microscope slides from those labs as well. Okay, so B is the Bowman's capsule, right? All the liquid's gonna get filtered out from the glomerulus and be captured by the Bowman's capsule. And all these things on the side, that actually is the proximal tubule. Okay, it's hard to see, but you know, because we are cutting it, right? It's a cross section. So what happens is, you know, it might be connected to this one behind the screen, right? And then it might loop up here and then connect to this one, and you know, it's just cutting it with a cross section. That's why it appears to be like a bunch of circles. Okay, but again, right? They might be connected somehow, you know, behind. So there you have it. Okay, next one. Is this the renal cortex or renal medulla? Well, you see all these glomerulus, right? All these glomerulus. And you know, you see the capsule here. So this is the renal cortex. Okay, even if I don't tell you that this is the cortex, even if I don't tell you this is the capsule, you should know that is the renal cortex because of all the glomerulus, right? If you think about the picture we drew before, right? You know, this is the renal pyramid, right? The glomerulus goes like this, right? The nephron goes like this, right? So all the glomerulus are going to be in the cortex. All right. That is it for the kidneys. Next, we have our skull. A here is the frontal bone. Frontal bone. Okay. G, that is the maxilla. Okay, it forms the bottom as well as a little bit of middle, right, of your eye socket. Right? There is the maxilla, right? And it also forms the socket for your upper row of teeth. And C, that's the mandible, the only movable bone in the entire head. Okay, so here we have to label all the bones of the orbit. Orbit is the eye socket. So let's do this. A is the frontal. Okay, bone. B, anybody know what B is? That's the one that people usually have trouble with. It goes from one side to the other side and it forms the back of the eye socket. Anybody remember what that is? There's a little gap in the back that allows the optic nerve to go through. Okay, that's a sphenoid bone. There's a little groove at the top of the sphenoid bone that allows the pituitary gland to sit in. C, we have the prominence of the cheek here. That's the zygomatic. D is the maxilla again. E is just this little bit here. It's actually a really big bone, right? That has a U shape, goes down all the way to your hard palate, your mouth, right? But that little bit is the palatine. Palatine bone. F is the acromial. And G is behind the acromial, which is the ethmoid. Okay, so you have one of these, two of these, one of these, one of this, two of these, and one of this. Yeah. All right, more models. Label B HKDL. That's the zygomatic. H here is this bone right here. Okay, that's the nachromal. Your tear duct is in there. K, you can only see a little bit of it here, but that goes through the entire head and connects to the other side, forming the back of the eye socket. It's a sphenoid bone. It's hard to see it without, physically having this model in your hand. But that's where the 3D models really would be useful, right? The one that I use online, right? You have a link to that as well. D is this bone. Okay. This is going to be the temporal bone. Okay. If you touch the back of your ear, there is a little knob there. That's this knob that you're feeling. Okay, the mastoid process. And here, this is going to be your ear canal. Okay. So like your ear is actually here, right? This is your ear. And if you touch the back of the ear, you will feel this knob. And that's the mastoid process. Okay. And then that's your ear canal. All right, bottom of the skull. Anybody remember the name of this hole? Just checking to see if you're still with me. What is the name of this hole? A hole is foramen, right? Foramen. And this is a really big hole. So foramen magnum. Magnum means big. Flanking the sides of the foramen magnum are these, semicircle knobby stuff. Those are the occipital condyle. Okay, which articulates. Articulate means forms a joint. Condyles, which articulate with C1. Okay. So it allows you to nod your head. Okay. Allows us to nod the head. N over here, that's part of the palatine bone. Okay, and just for completion, the one in front of it, that's the maxilla. Okay, so this is the roof of your mouth, right? If you push your tongue up, you will touch the maxilla. If you curl your tongue a little bit backwards, you will touch the palatine. Okay. What structure goes through F? If we are going on the way up, it will be the spinal cord going through the foramen magnum, which then becomes the medulla oblongata. Okay. Spinal cord goes in and becomes the medulla, the brainstem, right? Medulla oblongata. All right. Next up, actually, you know what? Let's give you a moment to catch up if you need to. Next, we have the right arm here when we're looking at it from the front. Okay, you can always tell by locating the thumb. So that will be the humerus. The one on the outside, that's the radius. And the one on the inside is the ulna. This part is the chicken wing, right? Excuse me, chicken wing. When you eat the chicken wing, that's the same part. And of course, chickens don't have hands, so they have the, you know, that part that nobody eats. Well, nobody eats in my family. The pointy part. Okay. This is the hand, and we're looking at it from the front. So A, which are the egg bones here, that's the carpal. Okay, you might have heard of carpal tunnel syndrome. Carpals, 8 of them. These ones, 5 of them. These are the metacarpals, which is 5. And all the finger bones, those are the phalanges, which you have 14 of. 3 on each of these 4 fingers, and then 2 at the thumb. Okay, so 3 times 4 is 12, 13, 14. Vertebrae. So these one, right, these are the cervical, the ones in the neck. Okay. Specifically, that would be atlas, C1. That would be axis, C2. These one will be in the chest, so that's the thoracic. Okay. You have a total of 12 of these, 7 of these. And the thoracics, you know, that's where your ribs are going to be coming out from, right? Your rib cage, it's going to come out to the front like that. And at the bottom, we have the lumbar, which is 5. Okay. Next, we have the C1 and C2. Okay. So C1 is this one. This whole thing is C1. So that's the C1. And these surfaces, which is the superior articulate surface, connects with occipital condyle. Of the skull, right? So you can see these are grooves. And I'm just going to go back to show you, right? These are the occipital condyles. They are semicircles. So those would sit right on here. And you can nod your head. Okay. B is the C2, which has this little protrusion that comes out and form a pivot joint with C1. Okay, so this little protrusion, that is called the odontoid process. And so what type of joint? This is the pivot joint. Okay. All right, moving on. Vertebrae. A here, we have the inferior. Inferior articular process. And you can see how it connects with the superior articular process of the next bone, right? This one at the back, that's the spinous process. You might be able to feel yours if you run your hand down the middle of your back. Okay, those knobby things that you're feeling, those are the spinous process of your vertebrae. And in between each of the vertebra, there is going to be the intervertebral discs. Okay. Next, the rib cage. Okay. So right here, that whole thing is the sternum, right? So we have the top part, which is the manubrium, followed by the body and the xiphoid process. And together, that forms the sternum. Xiphoid is Xiphoid. It's a little bit hard to see here, sorry. Over here, that is the clavicle. Okay, your collarbone. You can also see the shoulder blade here, which is called the scapula. You can see in the background, that's the classroom you would have been sitting in if we were doing this in person. Students usually like to take selfies with this skeleton during break time. F right here, that is the costal cartilage. Okay, it connects the ribs to your sternum. Okay, A here, that's the clavicle again. We're looking at it from the back. We have the shoulder blade or scapula. And your deltoid muscle sits around here. Okay, the one on your shoulder, basically. And C is this one. That is the humerus, the funny bone. And this joint right here, that is a ball and socket. Okay. The head of the humerus and the glenoid process of the scapula. Okay. That groove that the ball goes into, glenoid process. All right, next part, rib cage. Locate the true ribs. We have a total of 7 pairs of true ribs. Well, we'll try to number them here. Starting at the very top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and number 7. Okay, so these true ribs, they have their own costal cartilage. Okay, number 1 connects to the manubrium in the body, and then 2 through 7 connects to the body. So those are the true ribs. The false ribs are number 8 to 12. So number 8 is here, right? Number 9 is hard to see, but it's going to be over here. 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay. It's much easier to see on the actual model. So the 11 and 12, because they don't have any cartilage, we call them floating ribs. Okay. Whereas 8 to 10, they would have cartilage that connects to the cartilage of number 7. Okay, so they indirectly connects to the sternum. All right, moving on. We're almost there. Hang in there. Okay, A here. A, that is a lumbar. You have 5 of them, right? Lumbar vertebrae, vertebra, singular, vertebrae, plural. B is this thing right here. Goes all the way to the front, right here. Okay, that is the ilium. Okay, and this here, that's the iliac crest. Imagine, you know, coming home from grocery, you're holding a box of grocery and you need to fumble for your keys. So you rest the box on your hip. That's the iliac crest that you're resting the box on. Okay, E right here. E is this bone here at the front. Okay, that is the pubis. Okay, so the pubis connects with the other pubis on the other side through a little bit of a cartilage right here. That is the pubis symphysis. We got the sacrum here. Sacrum, S-A-C-R-U-M. A couple other things. This is the thing that you're sitting on right now. That's the ischium. And there's a hole right here in the middle. That is the obturator. Foramen. Okay, so that's where the blood vessels and the nerves are going to go through to your legs. So you know when you are you know sitting down, you're not going to compress on the blood vessels and stuff like that. All right. All right. This is looking at it from the side. A is the tailbone. Those are the coccyx bone. Coccyx bone, C-O-C-C-Y-X, coccyx bone, tailbone. C is the part of the ischium that you're sitting on. This particular arch is called the ischiotuberosity. All these is in your notes, right? By the way, we learned about it. Just so you know, that's hard to see. Let me go back to pink. Ischiotuberosity. Okay, and that groove here, that is the acetabulum, right? Acetabulum, which connects to the head of femur. Okay, ball and socket joint. Seven more slides. Hang in tight. Okay, that's the need. A here, we have the femur, longest bone of the body. This is the left knee we're looking at from the front. Left knee from the front. That's the tibia. Tibia forms a T shape at the front. And then followed by the little fibula on this side. There is your patella tendon. And inside the tendon, you have your patella, okay, your kneecap. Okay. All these other stuff, it's like just to stabilize your knee, right? You might have heard of athlete, they torn their ALC or something like that, right? That's one of these ligaments. Okay, foot. Label all the letters. Right, so A here, that is your talus. Okay, it's one of your tarsal bones. You know, in the hands you have 8 carpals, right? So the feet version of carpals are called tarsals, and you have a total of 7 tarsals. Okay, so the tarsals, you have 7 total, which includes the A and the B here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, these are all tarsals, and one of the tarsals is the talus. Your ankle bone contains the talus as part of it. Okay, this is the heel bone, which is also part of talus. Tarsals, rather. Sorry, that's the calcaneus. Okay, and each of these has a name as well, but you know it's already way too much, so we just call them tarsals. Okay, so remember all these ones, right? The talus, the calcaneus, and then these tarsals, they are all tarsals. Over here, we have 5 of them. Those are the metatarsals. And finally, the toes, phalanges. Okay. All right, here's the bones. Label a slide of a compact bone. This whole thing, that is an osteon. Okay, do I even have a label for that? Probably not. Oh yeah, there is this one. Okay, this pointing at the whole thing. That is an osteon, which is a structural unit of compact bone. Okay. In case you forgot, here is your bone. Okay, at the ends of the bone, you have spongy bone. spongy bones. Okay, spongy bone here as well. But on the side and along the shaft, right, there's going to be the compact bone. Okay. Compact bone are much denser than spongy bones. Spongy bones are kind of like honeycomb, right? So if you look at the compact bone, you will see these osteon. In the middle of the osteon, there's going to be an opening. That is the central canal. That's where the blood vessels are going to be coming up from. You're going to see all these pockets. Okay, these little pockets. Those pockets, they are called lacuna. Okay, that's where bone cells are going to be found in. Okay. So there is another lacuna here. Another lacuna. And you can't really see it here too well at this magnification. It's only 75. But, you know, coming out from the lacuna are these little cracks. Okay, so these cracks, which is what this is pointing at, that's the caniculus. Sorry, caniculus. Okay. Which are little cracks that allows the blood vessels to transverse through this osteon. And finally, the entire, like the rest of it, basically, that would be the calcified matrix, and we call that the lamina. Okay, so like if you imagine like a cinnamon roll or something like that, cinnamon roll, raisin cinnamon roll. Okay, the raisin would be the lacuna, and then the dough, right? The bulk of it is basically the lamina. Okay, so this is made up of calcified matrix. Calcified matrix. All right. Okay, male reproductive system. Let's see what we have here. Okay, number one, which is down here, right? That is the testicles. Number two. Where's number two? Number two is right here. That is the epididymis. That's where the sperm becomes mobile, and they're stored there as well before they're released. Number three, that's the vas deferens. Okay. So males can undergo vasectomy, right? So they'll cut the vas deferens, and that's one form of birth control, because the semen, once you cut the vas deferens, the semen will have no sperm in it. Number five is right here. This here, right? There are two of them. This is the seminal vesicle. Okay, it secretes a basic fluid into the semen that will help neutralize the acidity in the vagina. Number seven. Number seven is right here. This whole thing. That's the prostate gland. Prostate gland. And finally, there is the bulbourethral gland. Okay, so this one secretes the basic fluid that kind of flush the urethra before the actual ejaculation. Okay, so that's, you know, in case there's like remaining urine in there or something, so that bulbourethral fluid will flush it and make sure it's not gonna, kill the sperm or anything like that. Next, we have number 28. Where is number 28? It's right here. 28 is the urinary bladder. Okay. So for people who have an enlarged prostate, that will press on the urinary bladder, and you will feel the urge to go pee more often than you normally would. So that's cause for concern. You have to check your prostate. And for men who are over 40 or 45, doctors would usually routinely check for the prostate, right? So they would do a rectal examination. The finger goes up here and then they'll feel the prostate, right? To see if it's enlarged. Not a pleasant experience, I can imagine. Number 34, that is the pubis symphysis. Okay, hold on a second. If I go back to here, you see the pubis, and the pubis is connected through the pubis symphysis in the middle. It's kind of like a cartilage bone structure. And that's what it is right here. Okay, the pubis symphysis right here. Number 34. Number 30. Number 30 is right here. That's the rectum. Number 9. Where is number 9? It's like finding Waldo. It's so hard to see from this picture. Number 9 is right here. That is the urethra. Okay, both urine and semen comes out from the same tube. That's why the bulbourethral gland has to flush it, right, before the sperm comes out. Number 16, that's the skin that goes around the testicles. That's the scrotum. If it's hot, the scrotum would pull the testicles away from the body. If it's cold, it will pull it towards the body, because spermatogenesis is sensitive to temperature. All right, there is the testicle slides. So what you're looking at here, this whole thing is a cross section of the seminiferous tubules. Okay, there's a comment in the chat. Okay, I will answer you afterwards. I'm not aware of something like that. Mary, has none at all. Like it's gone, you mean? Interesting. We'll talk about that after. So that is a seminiferous tubules. Okay, so remember, like in the testicles, there's going to be all these lobes, and the seminiferous tubules is all like coiled up inside. Okay, so like if I take a look at one of the lobes, right, you will see all these tubes basically all coiled up. Okay, in the lecture I said it's like ramen, right? Like instant noodles, right? It's all coiled up and packed up. So if you pull one of them out, right, you will see there's a tube, and again it's like all looped up like that. Okay, and that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the cross section of one of these tubes. Okay, so on the inside, on the edge, you would have the germ cells, and as meiosis occurs, they will progress towards the center. Okay, and all these lines that you're looking at, those are the tails of the sperm. Tails of the sperm. Okay. One year I remember we were doing this in class, and you actually have to look at the microscope for these things, right? And there were two guys were looking at this, and I asked them, "Do you guys know what you're looking at?" And then they were like, "Yeah, definitely we're looking at the kidneys. And then I told them, no, these are actually sperms. And they were actually very surprised. Because they thought these little circle stuff, they were the glomerulus. It's hard to tell, I guess, right? Like unless you see this many times. Okay? But the key thing is if you see all these lines, right? That's going to be the tails of the sperm that we're looking at. Okay, almost there. Seriously, I said that like half an hour ago, but for real, we are almost there. Number one is the ovary. Number two is the fallopian tube. Number three is the fimbriae. Okay, these are like little hair structures that guides the egg into the fallopian tube. Number six. Where's number six? Number six is right here. That's the cervix. Remember the pluck I keep on talking about? That's gonna sealed right here. Okay, and the baby's gonna grow inside. Number seven, myometrium. That's the muscle. Number eight, that's right here. That is the, no. Number eight is right here. Sorry, that's number nine. Number eight is right here. That's the uterus. And number nine, we have the, that's the vagina. All right. Twenty-one is right here. That's the urinary bladder. So when the person is pregnant, the baby gets really big and it presses on the urinary bladder. So again, you will have the urge to go pee all the time. 22 is right here. That's the urinary bladder and urine's gonna come out from here. That is the urethra, much shorter in female. 25, rectum. 26, I think that's 26, right? That's the anus. 31 is that bone again that we were talking about, the pubis symphysis. 35 is just the spinal cord. And 29 is the round ligament. Right here, okay? And the function of the round ligament is to hold the uterus in place. Okay, so as the baby grows, it gets really heavy. You don't want the uterus to kind of fall down, right? So the ligaments kind of hold it in place, right? Like, I don't know if you heard about stories where, there are some women who their entire uterus falls out after like giving birth, right? And that sounds really scary, but it's a real thing, right? So one of the things that holds it in place is this round ligament. All right, and that is it. Okay. So make sure you go through this on your own before you attempt the quiz. The quiz will be available starting next Friday, Good Friday, and you will have until Monday to do it. And the final test of the course is going to be happening on the Tuesday. So next week, what we will do is we will take up lecture 12. Okay, and if we have time, we'll do a little bit of a review for the test as well. Okay. So Mary, I don't know the answer to your question, but I will look into it. It's the first time I hear about it. If I find anything, I will email you the answer. Okay. Other than that, thanks for coming again. Please be sure to do the survey if you have a moment. and I'll see you all next week. Have a good day. Bye.